Your life experience, good or bad, is a gift when you share it with others. At Taxi Chronicles, we allow real riders with real stories to share their gift. So hopefully this episode will intrigue, enhance or inspire you. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Morning. Yes, we're back with another rider, another episode. Today we're honoured to have a fellow podcaster. He's doing better than me. Straight away I have to put that out there. And I'm going to let him tell you all about his podcast. Nice to have you today, Alex.
Hi, thank you. It's very strange to be the one behind the microphone for once.
Well, it's our pleasure. It's our pleasure to have you here today. So tell us about your podcast, why you started it, what motivates you?
Well, I started off doing a radio university course. Apparently they do those sorts of things. It was news to me. I did that and I was skint for a bit, and then I got signed on to a company that makes podcasts full-time. Started doing that end of 2019. Happy for a couple of months, except for having to cover the general election, which was a bit depressing for various reasons. And then I went off on holiday, March 2020, when things were obviously shutting down quite a bit. I get a text from my boss saying, well, it looks like we're going to have to do everything remotely. So I kind of let him know the kind of microphones we'd need. And yeah, I've been producing podcasts remotely ever since. The main one is daily politics show called The Bunker. Do some for kind of big private partners. Did one for Royal College of Nursing. They got to tell us what the last year's been like for them. A lot of financial stuff, a lot of culture stuff. Got interesting guests coming in all the time, really. And it's my job to listen to interesting people talk about themselves for a living.
So it's like me, but mine is spontaneous, and you're at the more of the connoisseur end.
Well, yeah.
So, just to make sure we're on the same page, you create the podcast and then you start running it and then you hand it over to the client.
Yeah, pretty much. I set the tech up, my bosses have heard these stories day in, day out, but a lot of the time it's people who used to run the country, kind of big people in the Home Office, former ministers and stuff like that, and to be kind about it, well, to be as kind as possible, possibly don't know how to use their phones and their computers, so it's kind of my job to make sure that we get a decent sound out of them.
So you get a lot of calls. Why is this not working?
Oh yeah, I'm not looking into it too much, but there's a few high-profile politicians on my phone who've rung me to be like, well, I'm trying to log in, but it won't give me the right page. A lot of politicians. Yeah. They get people to do that for them, which is fine.
Talking about politicians, what are they like? Have you interviewed them yourself, or you just set it up for them?
No, I have to kind of load them into the page and sort of be like, yes, well, you can't, because we don't see them, which is new, because it's not like Zoom where you just get their bookshelves behind them and they're kind of angled really low down.
Yeah.
No, it's just audio, so I just kind of have to sit and wait for them to load in and just give them pleasantries as I would anyone else, really. I mean, I can't say, I wish I could give you the gossip, but I can't say there's been any particular unpleasantness from any politician, because you know what they're like at this. They know how to turn on the charm when they're in a production environment, especially when they think they might be caught saying something off the record.
And you've got a reputation. You need to anonymously. Yeah, you got to. Yeah, I understand. So, as a guy who sets up podcasts, and I'm sure there's many people out there who set up podcasts or want to do a podcast, I should say, what kind of equipment should they have, and what should they know?
Well, I think it depends. There's not too much you need in order to make something that's compelling enough for other people to listen to. Like, it depends what you're going for, really. If you want something where you're sitting important people down in a nice fancy studio and putting the music beds in and making it really production heavy, you can do that. And I could talk your ear off about the kind of studio setups and microphones that you can have. But honestly, a lot of the time, you can just have a phone into the back of somebody's car, and that will be...
Yeah.
No, really, that is something that...
What we're doing now,
it's about authenticity, really. Like, a lot of my job can be making people sound more interesting than they actually are through editing. But there is a certain draw. I think the thing that people like about podcasts is that it feels very real a lot of the time. That you can just sit two people down who are kind of, on the same on the same page, and sometimes it works if you've got the right atmosphere. You don't necessarily need scripting and studio production and all this stuff, but as long as you've got the right idea for a through line for it, it can work really well.
Okay, that's good. But would it be like two mics? You say, I know you can use a phone like we're using now. Before I had the phone with two wired microphones, but they're getting damaged or they're rubbing, and then you'd lose the whole episode.
It's tough.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go for the Bluetooth. There's these two wireless Bluetooth mics. They're boxes that you clip on, one to you, one to me, and there's the recording base there. It'll go there. So I was gonna go for that. What have you learnt throughout your time being in the podcast industry that you wish you knew when you had started?
Oh, I mean, formal training, I think I wish I had that more. A lot of what I've learned has been necessary because if I hadn't learned on the fly, then things might have ended in disaster. I think it's been interesting because I think I take for granted a lot of the time how much other people are technologically aware. Because back in the old days where I could just put a person down in front of a microphone and then I would just do the work of making it sound good, that was fine. But I really did find that when everything went remote, you have to be patient with people who don't necessarily have everything in front of them and understand how it works, because like I'm of a generation where you pick things up and you understand them immediately. And I guess it's a weird industry because a lot of the time you get told that by the bigger production companies, oh well, you need a name, you need this and that in order for something to be interesting and for people to listen and for it to be successful, and it can be very sort of gatekeepy and reserved for the more important people. But honestly, it's like I was saying, you only really need good stories told by interesting people in order to make it something that people want to listen to. And it's just been my experience that you can be surprised. Like, you can have high profile politicians or cultural people who don't actually sound all that good behind the microphone, or you can have somebody who's been working in, I don't know, like
In Asda.
well, not even that, just like, but I mean, people on the street can have those kind of stories, but even people who've been working in their industry for 20 years have never spoken to people before, but once you actually get them started, you can't stop them.
Yeah, people like to talk about themselves.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. In the sense of, you spoke about editing, and I don't edit. I don't edit because part of me is very lazy. The other part is, and probably this is an excuse for the laziness, that I believe that I don't want anyone to say I try to make them look a certain way. If I don't edit, then it's like, well, that's what you said. There's no cuts, there's no joining, there's nothing. That's just what you said. Now, if you want to retract something later on, that's down to you. How do you edit? What are you looking to remove, or when you edit, what are you looking to achieve?
It's weird. A lot of it is by eye. So when I edit, I'm seeing everything laying out in front of me. I do it in different channels. Everyone's got their own one where I can see where they said everything and how long they've been saying it for. And a lot of the time I'm trying to make it so that you get an even share between everyone. You're not trying to make someone take over the entire conversation. There's a lot of things where now, because I've been doing it for so much, I can see just by eye looking at the edit where people are umming and ahhing and where they're delaying the kind of things, like from having listened to it before, I can tell where they're going to say a certain thing and I can cut straight to that. I think it's just about, I never try too much to change what people have said or change the kind of the meaning of what they're saying based on the order of it. I'm always looking to make it quicker. It's always good when, like, I'm never trying to make anybody sound different. I think it's more important to make the conversation sound like it's going somewhere, like you're trying to make it so that
The flow.
yeah, the flow, like the dynamic
Dance of
yeah.
conversation.
Sometimes you have to, I'm quite lucky to work with people who are good conversationalists, and that's definitely what you need for podcasts. And I can't say that I've ever kind of like manufactured a dynamic, but sometimes you do need to speed people up. And I think what I look for is to not leave too much space and to keep it as compact as possible while still letting everybody have their piece and say what they need to.
This is a question of honesty. Honesty.
Oh, okay.
I've had interviews before where I thought, Simon, you need to improve and make this more interesting. You're either asking the wrong questions or this person is really boring. But as the host, you must take a accountability that if the conversation seems boring, then you're not doing something right. Do you, when it comes to editing, try and make it salvage what you can, or do you just say, all right, we'll just write that one off?
I think it's, a lot of it comes down to when you're actually producing the episode, where you can kind of sense that a question maybe isn't being interpreted in the way that you intended by the person you're interviewing. And this happens a lot with politicians, where a question gets asked, and you know what they could be like sometimes.
They answer the one they wish they could have been asked.
Exactly. So you have to kind of take it with a pinch of salt that you're gonna be able to, if not on the edit, then at least in follow-up questions, to get out of them what you're looking for. And it depends really, because you can go into an interview with somebody important or anyone that you're bringing on the podcast with reams and reams of questions, with everything you think that you want to cover, and then it can take a completely different direction. I think it really does depend on the host's ability and the panel's ability to get the dynamic of the person they're speaking to, really kind of figure out what makes them tick in terms of the conversation and then steer it in that direction. I think if you're just rattling off the same list of questions every time, they can sense that, and they can sense that it's not something that they necessarily have to divulge too much from.
Yeah. Okay.
It does depend, I think.
Yeah, I see it. I mean, that's a good point about the same questions, because I do have some generic questions, about 5 of them, but I try to feed off what the person tells me.
It's about the flow. Yeah, it's about, you can't just kind of direct them back to your line if they're not feeling it. It kind of has to be something which you work out yourself.
So tell us about your podcast, The Debunker.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, what platforms can we find it?
Well, the general line is Apple, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts, which is at the end of every show. We do Patreons as well, not to plug, but it literally pays my wages. So you get episodes early by doing that. That's how we mostly build our income. We did do live shows, and then the funniest thing happened, where we don't do those anymore. But hopefully we'll be back in the summer. And people really enjoy those. A lot of the support we got came from opposition to Brexit. And that's kind of how we built the subscriber base. So a lot of the listeners are very dedicated to that sort of thing. So if you're into that, then you will love it.
Okay, and the Debunker one, that's different, isn't it?
Oh, so yeah, so we got The Bunker, and that's a spin-off from another one that we did, which used to be called Romaniacs, and which is now called Oh God, What Now? Because we couldn't really talk about Remain anymore, because we didn't.
Yeah, we did it. We just did it. That party was was over. Okay. Well, you've been an interesting conversation and guest. We're running out of time here.
Thank you.
What's the impact you want to have on the world as a podcaster?
Oof, man, that's a big one to end with.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I want for people to think that it sounds good, just simply, which has been difficult sometimes. I did edit a podcast about a year ago where somebody was speaking from their car in the middle of a thunderstorm, and we somehow managed to salvage the podcast. I think in terms of what impacts I want to have, I think, you know, in the work that we do, a lot of it is sort of going over in great detail how fucked we are politically. And I think that I would quite like to see, if not making an actual difference on the politics of this country, at least to report on it and talk about it in an honest way, because I think a lot of the time you have people who have their own agendas for why they want to present their views to the world and the way that they want to make their impact.
Their rhetoric,
And I think it would really, if I can say that I helped to amplify voices of people who do genuinely want to make a change, and not just for, you know, factional reasons or to get ahead themselves.
Yeah, personal gain.
Exactly. And if I can talk to people like that and let them say what they want to say about the way the world is, then I'll be happy with what I've done.
Last question, quick question. For those who are setting up a podcast, what platform do you reckon they launch from? I use Anchor. I've heard of Buzz, can't remember the other name. What would you recommend?
We used to use Podbean. We now use Acast. I think it really depends on your budget. That SoundCloud is a good one as well. You can publish from SoundCloud onto podcast feeds. I'm pretty sure you can do that with a Prime membership. It's not ideal, but if you're just starting out and you're not kind of wanting to commit too much to publishing it, then I think that's probably a good place to start.
Okay, well, thanks a lot.
No problem.
And we wish you well. We hope you liked that Taxi Chronicles interview. Don't forget to share and subscribe to get the latest episode. Ever considered investing in the continent with the fastest growing economies and population on Earth? The same continent that holds 30% of the world's known natural resources. Listen to our sister podcast, Africa Investor Stories, where you hear real investors with real stories from around the world share their experience of investing in Africa. We post Monday and Thursday at 10 a.m. British Standard Time.